Hello everybody. Today I want to talk about my relationship with the court cards of the tarot. I know that many of usually when people talk about problems reading with tarot, they will talk about the court cards. I have some problems with the court cards too, but it's not because I have problems reading them, but it's because I have problem relating them to like in a less traditional way. Let's put it that way. This kind of reading, I see the court cards as people that we come into contact with in everyday life. So we know that there are like the king, queens, knights and pages. So the pages are usually little kids, but so the gender tends to be more ambiguous, but knights and kings are more obviously male, while the queens are more obviously female. So because of my first tarot, which is a very artsy deck, and I rely heavily on the Little White Book, to which I kind of internalize the way that it's written, like pages are children, then knights and kings are guys, queens are ladies. So it's actually a very narrow way of looking at people. I will refer you to the gingerbread man. So it's a very beautiful image of how we humans are so complex that we cannot talk about us as male here and female. It's actually like male, female, and there's a gray area in between. So in that graphic you can see how many kinds of gray areas we have in our human when describing ourselves. So I will encourage you to look at that and understand that whatever I'm talking about here, I'm talking about it because I, as a tarot reader, I cannot know 100% of who the querent is as a person. I rely on the court cards as real people, but also as their indicative gender. Like if King of Pentacles is a man. So, but I will go more deeply into how I understand the court cards. Just to backtrack a bit, you'll see that just now I show these two cards. This is from my very first tarot deck. I do not have a name for it, but when I first looked at it, I was very attracted by these two court cards, the Queen of Swords and the Knight of Pentacles. For the Knight of Pentacles, I think you will know immediately why I like this person, because it's drawn very nicely, to put it simply. But for the Queen of Swords, when I read the description for her, it was about a lady with a lot of sorrow, who knows sorrow. But in this depiction, she's holding her sword so in a very protective stance, and she doesn't look sad. In fact, she looks like she's ready to protect you. So I've always associated the Queen of Swords with a person who, because she knows sorrow, she's willing to protect the people who may be very sorrowful. So I have always identified with the knights in the courts and also the queens in many ways. So now I will dive into how I read more deeply with the court cards. So of course, as tarot readers, we must first understand the meaning of the cards. And people always recommend that page are the earth, knights are the air, queens are the water, and kings are the fire element. So let's say if it's the Pentacles, page of Pentacles, it will be the earth of earth, something like that. And King of Cups will be the fire of water. Keywords that there's also I think pretty universal. So page will be something like a seed, the beginning. Then the knights will be something like idealistic. Queens will be nurturing. Kings will be mastery. So it's a combination of keywords which I will link below some videos that I find very helpful for me in my understanding and expansion of my understanding of the cards. But to me, because of my first deck, my reading of the cards tends to be very traditional, so like male, female, male, children. Children feel that many of the readers over here will be pretty angry with my own interpretation of the cards. For example, when I see this Queen of Pentacles in relation to the querent who may be a bit younger, I may assume that it's an older woman who is more like a motherly figure. Then if the same person who is quite young and there's a Knight of Cups, if she's the querent is a female, a passive female, I will ask her if there's a male around her. So you see my meanings are pretty traditional and pretty not that good. One way that I work with my cards is to see myself in relationship to them first. So in this way, I acknowledge the complexities within myself as a human, and thus if the very first step, that if this is not a older woman around that querent, who will it be? So if this first step doesn't work, I will move on to the second stage, which is to go deeper into the meaning. And to do that, I try to relate myself to each of the cards. So usually people will say I'm the Queen of Wands, I'm the Knight of Cups, but to me, I see myself in all of the cards, even though I may not use them all equally. For example, I am the Queen of Pentacles the least. That will explain the way why I do not like her the most in the cards. I like her the least because I embodied her the least. But but I think for me as a person, I embodied the Queen of Cups the most, being I'm very private. I'm a very private person. And also let me see, I guess the Knight of Pentacles too, the most. I embody them too the most. Cause I'm a slow person and I can be a bit I have to overanalyze things, so my movement are very slow. So something like that. Who I embody the least, who I embody the most, and who I wish to embody them more. So it will be the King of Swords. I really love this depiction from the Tarot of the Hidden Realms, because this picture seems to speak volumes about, like the artist is really amazing. All her portraits talk, even though they do not have the traditional symbols, but to me this card talks to me the most, because I feel like this king is very silent, listening to what I have to say, and he will not judge me. He will simply give me advice from a very rational perspective. And as somebody who is not very rational, I wish to embody him more, to separate the emotional from the rational. Like of course, as humans we are emotional beings, but there's a point where we need to do things, and how we do things is by being rational before working back with the emotional, in my experience. I relate myself to all of them and first understand how I may embody them in real life. For example, I'm a queen of swords at times where I'm thinking out ideas to improve my work processes in my workplace. I will be the page of cups at times where I'm trying to decide what costume or what clothes I'm going to wear outside. Just by understanding yourself in relationship to the court cards, I believe you can build a better understanding and better empathy for the querent, because they may not be what they are more complex than what we see them at first glance. So at my tarot meetup group, I have people who are new to tarot talking about the court cards, and one of the ways I advise them to work with the court cards, which is also learned from the online YouTube community, especially from Tom Benjamin, is to talk with the cards. So I will try to post the link to the actual video where Tom Benjamin talks about working with cards. I do not know if he spoke exclusively about the court cards, but remember the thing that he talked about is to tell the court cards what you want from them. So I will tell, in the same vein, I will tell the newbie that maybe it's also good to talk to your decks and tell them what you want. So for example, for the court cards, how do we know if it's about us or the other person? So for me, that's not such a big problem, because as I mentioned earlier, it's from how I perceive them. So if they're male, so they will usually be the king and knights. Of course, it's a very narrow interpretation, I acknowledge that, but that's how I work with it. But for the newbie, I will tell them probably you can talk to your card. So say if this is about the querent or yourself, it will be outright. Please give me an outright card. And if it's about other person other than yourself or the querent, tell the tarot cards to give you a card which is reverse. So if it's a reverse page of swords, you will know that it's about not about you or the querent, but about other people around you, which embodies the very the childlike energy of the sword suit, something like that. So sometimes one thing I want to work with more is to work more with the court cards in the tarot, so that I will move away from perceiving like woman to be usually the queen and so on. So I did try once. It will be a good I'm just trying to do a lot of things at one go, so I thought it would be nice to hold a tarot image in my mind while I do my yoga practice. I practice on my yoga move. So I shuffled the top deck, and up for this card. So I was like, okay, point taken, yoga pose. I'm doing yoga, okay, good. Let me meditate on that, sure Toph. Thanks for that. So I meditated on this card, and what I saw is not a masculine or feminine, a traditional masculine or feminine energy, but that of devotion. So of course all nights are about devotion to some kind of ideas, but from this, the path work or meditation with this card while I was doing yoga, I realized that this devotion is a bit different from what I usually understand about the nights. So this devotion is not blind, it's something your heart burns for, and you know it's the right way. It's the right devotion. It's a devotion that is shown in a very divine way. I will hope to work more with the chord cards in this way because I will gather more insights. But for the moment, this is how I relate the tarot to people at face value, and how I relate to each chord cards as a whole, such that I can better inform my querent, my clients, on how these chord cards relate to them in life. Thank you.